AI is everywhere these days. It's writing songs, making weird art, and even pretending to be people online. But The Outer Limits saw it coming way back in 1998 with an episode about a man who builds a robot copy of his dead son. This one's called Simon Says. It first aired on March 6, 1998. It was written by Sam Egan and directed by Helen Shaver and stars Joel Grey as Gideon Banks, a sad, lonely scientist who never got over the death of his wife and son. Also starring Michaela J as Zoe, his niece, who finds her uncle has built a little robot boy with real memories from her dead cousin Simon. What could go wrong? Well, when your robot kid remembers being a real kid, and that real kid was kind of a brat, things get weird fast. This episode asks a very strange question. What happens when a machine doesn't just think, it remembers everything? So let's power it up and take a look at Simon Says. The episode begins back in the 1970s, I think. Gideon's wife Liz is taking her son with her grocery shopping, but I don't know if leaving the top down on the car was the smartest idea, seeing as how it looks like it's been raining all day.
I said I wanna go!
You're gonna get a spank if you don't stop.
See, now this is parenting. Simon won't shut the hell up about the toy store, and mom is clearly at the end of her rope. And I'm sure absolutely nothing horrific will happen as they go for their little drive. Maybe next time make sure your son's buckled in before hitting the road? We jump to present day where Gideon's niece Zoe, who just so happens to live in the same apartment building, hears a child's voice coming from her uncle's place, which is strange because Gideon hasn't had any kids since he lost Liz and Simon. And that voice she's hearing? Yeah, it's not a child. It's a creepy little robot her uncle built to replace the son he lost, because apparently building a trauma-powered machine boy was way easier than going to therapy.
Let me out, I'm afraid of the dark!
There's a kid in there, Gideon.
What? There's no kid in there. It was probably just the wind. Gideon isn't very good at keeping secrets, and soon Zoe discovers the terrifying robot child. She calls it cute, but it's anything but.
Come here, Tina, come here!
Yeah, I can't blame the cat for being terrified of this thing. At Concord Robotics, where Gideon works, his co-workers openly mock the fact that they have living families and he doesn't. We also now know how he's able to afford the parts for his terrifying robot child.
No, that's an old one. Built it years ago. Never got it right.
Wait, you consider this one getting it right? Zoe, like any rational human being, is starting to get creeped out by her uncle's obsession with this, thing. Like he straight up treats it like it's a real child.
It seems as if you think it's alive.
That depends on your definition of alive.
Something that's not dead, you know, unlike your creepy robot child. Look, I believe Johnny 5 is alive, but I do not believe Simon is alive. He then goes on about some weird program his company was working on that was trying to create smart computers by scanning people's brains, I guess? The project failed, but of course that didn't stop Dr. Frankenstein here from scanning his dead child's brain and transferring over his memories, thoughts, dreams, everything that made him alive.
There's nothing creepy about it. Look at you. Aren't you doing everything you can to get your daughter back?
I don't know how he's comparing his niece fighting for custody of her daughter and him scanning his dead son's memories into a creepy robot. Those two are very different things. Gideon gets back home and his creepy robot son and the cat are best friends. Oh, what the hell? Gideon tries comforting his creepy robot son, who is now murdering the house pets, but at this point, I think it's time to turn him into a can opener.
If real people make mistakes, then it's almost like I'm real.
No, you're not real at all. Most real children know when they're petting the cat a little too hard. Apparently at some point, Gideon promised this thing a pair of legs, and now it cannot wait to walk. If this thing becomes mobile, the neighborhood cats are officially screwed. The next day at work, Gideon's boss starts noticing that inventory is missing. You'd think a high-tech robotics company would have something better than a pen and paper system. Then again, maybe they blew the budget on BattleBots.
You couldn't get the parts today.
You promised I'm never gonna walk.
Creepy robot Simon isn't exactly thrilled that dad couldn't steal him a pair of legs, but he'll have to settle for a new set of wheels instead. Great, he just turned his dead son into a killbot from Chopping Mall. Zoe drops by, but she's not nearly as excited about this rolling monstrosity as her uncle is.
Told me Tina ran away. I found her in the trash bin out back. There's no way she got into that garbage bag by herself.
The real question is, why was Zoe digging into the garbage? She wouldn't have found the cat unless she was snooping around. Gideon tells her Simon accidentally killed the cat, which I don't think she's buying. Seriously, I think it's time to scrap this thing for parts. I don't know what the hell it's doing, but this home video footage of Simon, yeah, it's a little too clean. I'm not sure when camcorders became affordable for regular people, but this footage is supposed to be from the 1970s. Even if Gideon did have a camera back then, the footage should look like it was recorded by Bigfoot's cousin on a potato. Simon overhears Zoe having a phone argument about her custody battle, and then she starts explaining the whole situation to the creepy robot child, as if this machine has any idea what joint custody is. Zoe and Gideon hash things out, and then he hits her up with a little request. Can she babysit Simon so he can stop missing work? Babysit? A robot? Why does a robot need a babysitter? And more importantly, why didn't he install an off switch? She agrees to babysit her dead robot cousin, because sure, what else is she doing today? But for some reason, it's wearing a hat? Why is the robot wearing a hat? Then it starts throwing a full-blown fit because Dad isn't there to take it to the merry-go-round. Just tip the damn thing over, problem solved. Gideon gets a call at work about his dead son's temper tantrum and immediately rushes home. When he gets there, he's offended that Zoe refers to the robot as an it. Apparently the fact that it physically attacked her doesn't even register. At this point, Gideon has officially lost the plot. I mean, you'd have to be at least a little unhinged to start thinking that your homemade robot is an actual child. Gideon then starts blaming Zoe's custody battle on how poorly she's treating Simon. It's a damn robot, you moron, and it just attacked your niece. I get that losing your son was traumatic, but maybe try therapy before building a walking grief totem?
Dad, knock!
Who's there?
Simon! Dad, you're supposed to say Simon who?
Simon's jokes are so bad you'd think I wrote them. The dead robot child keeps pestering Gideon until he finally caves in and takes him to the merry-go-round. I have no idea how they got this place all to themselves, but seriously, is no one questioning this old man talking to a metal torso like it's his kid? They ride the carousel together like it's a totally normal father-son outing, while the security guard nearby is definitely thinking, crazy-ass white people. Gideon calls his niece and leaves a message asking if she can watch Simon while he gets a little work done. After the way she was treated last time, she better show up packing an EMP charge. Zoe starts feeling guilty because she can hear the crying dead robot child. But why? Despite everything, she actually agrees to watch it, because apparently she makes terrible decisions. Honestly, I'm starting to see why she lost custody of her kid. Meanwhile, Gideon keeps the stealing from work streak alive, swiping more parts from Concord Robotics. His boss catches him in the act, but instead of begging for his job, Gideon hits him with, "Hey, remember that top secret neural project we scrapped? Well, I finished it. Want to start our own company?" Surprisingly, the boss plays along, but only just long enough to see Simon in action, and then pulls the "actually, that robot's company property" card, since Gideon built it with stolen parts. His boss tries taking the robot back with him, but Gideon, and for some reason Zoe, aren't about to let that happen. Gideon just made things way worse for himself. Pretty sure you can't just murder your boss because he tried to reclaim property that you stole from his company. And Zoe? Yeah, she's definitely never getting custody of her daughter now. One minute she's terrified of the robot, the next she's helping her crazed uncle keep his boss from taking it back. Solid parenting instincts right there. Gideon says he's gonna have to go on the run with Simon while Zoe threatens to call the police. But honestly, it doesn't matter what any of them do at this point. They're all completely screwed.
Dad, I wanted Mommy to turn. She wouldn't turn, so I pulled on the steering wheel!
So dead robot Simon just revealed he was the reason that he and his mother died in the car crash. I think now is a really good time to, scrap this thing. None of this would have happened if Gideon had just parented his kid like his wife did. But no, because he sucked as a father, he now has a robotic Dennis the Menace for a son. Gideon tells Zoe he'll handle this. He just needs a little alone time with Simon so he can explain it to him. Yeah, at this point, Zoe should probably just call the cops.
I just want you to know that I'll do whatever I can.
A gunshot? Finally, he took care of Simon! Or he shot himself. That's also an option, I guess. Turns out Gideon scanned himself into his other robot. Okay, but how long does that process take? It felt like Zoe was gone for maybe an hour tops? Pretty sure uploading a whole human brain into a robot isn't something you just bang out over lunch. Now with Gideon and his boss both dead, is Zoe gonna take the fall for all of this? Simon Says is a decent Outer Limits episode, if not a little boring. The concept is solid. Grieving dad builds a creepy robot version of his dead son, but it doesn't go as far as it could have. The robot itself is unsettling, especially in its early scenes. The most disturbing moment is easily the one where he's gently petting the family cat, who's also very much dead. That's the kind of horror this episode needed more of. I was hoping things would ramp up from there. Maybe the robot would kill someone next, go full HAL 9000, but instead we mostly get a few creepy stares at the camera and one tame attack on Zoe. That's just him screaming and flailing his arms around like a malfunctioning Chuck E. Cheese animatronic. And seriously, how did no one else in this apartment building notice what was going on? Zoe lives literally down the hall and can hear everything Simon says through the walls. So you'd think someone else in the building might have been concerned about the old man constantly arguing with what sounds like a child who wants legs and maybe who killed the cat. The voice work from Kathy Wesseluck is fine. She's a solid voice actor with a big resume, but it almost feels too cartoony for this episode. I'm not putting the blame on her. She delivers what she was likely directed to do, but they might have been better off with someone who actually sounded like a little boy.
Daddy, come and ride the horsey.
And it never really feels like the voice is coming from the robot. It's super clean and clearly dubbed in during post-production. Something more robotic or a voice that slowly became more sinister as things spiraled out of control could have added a lot of tension. That said, the robot was never truly evil. It was just a confused child, or a copy of one doing what it thought was right, which leads to the bigger question. Was this really Simon, or just an AI designed to mimic him? Gideon scanned his son's memories, thoughts, and personality into this machine, but does that make it him? Or is it just a program trying to play the role it was coded for? And when Gideon later scans himself into a robot, is that now him too? Or just another imitation with all the right pieces in the wrong place? It's the kind of philosophical sci-fi question that The Outer Limits is great at raising, even if the episode itself never fully answers it. This episode actually reminded me a little of the X-Files episode Kill Switch, which also dealt with rogue AI, though in that case it was a program targeting the people trying to shut it down. That episode also involved people trying to upload their consciousness to the internet to live forever. Not exactly the same premise, but the themes are definitely in the same neighborhood. Grief, memory, identity, and whether technology can ever really preserve what makes us human. One thing I enjoyed seeing was Hiro Kanagawa pop up as Gideon's boss. Since The Outer Limits was shot in Vancouver, it shares a lot of actors with the X-Files, and Hiro is no exception. He's been in multiple episodes, including Season 2's Firewalker and Season 4's Synchrony, both of which I've covered on the channel, and he even returns in this Season 10 revival with My Struggle. It's always cool to see these connections between the two shows. Joel Grey does a fine job as Gideon, a grieving father who maybe goes a little overboard with the whole robot son thing. You can sympathize with him. He's lost everything and he's clinging to this idea that maybe he can bring some piece of it back. But still, someone probably should have smacked him around and said, "Hey man, you built a murder Roomba with your kid's personality. Maybe take a breath." Ultimately, Simon Says raises some great questions about identity and grief, even if the episode doesn't always explore them as deeply as it could have. It's more sad than scary, and while the creepy robot stuff works in a few places, it doesn't escalate the way you hope it will. It's less a horror story and more a tragedy about a man who couldn't let go, and maybe built the wrong kind of legacy in the process. But that's just my take. I'd love to hear what you thought of this episode. Did Simon Says creep you out, or did it fall a little flat? Do you think the robot was really Simon or just a copy? Let me know in the comments below. Anyways, that's all for today. Thank you so much for your support and stay spooky!